They release oxygen, and that's actually what's in the bubbles. And plants also produce glucose, that's the sugars. This is the end of the first section. We're going to go on to the next section here. Plant growth. What cell material is replicated before bean plant cells divide? So this is talking about cell reproduction, cell replication, and before a cell can actually split in two and become two cells that are exactly the same, it needs to replicate the most important part of the cell, which is the DNA. Not the RNA, fatty acids, or amino acids. This is just to throw you off. DNA always needs to be replicated first. Okay, so I think this is the same kind of little pictorial. Many plants grow from seeds. As a plant grows, it requires energy. Okay. Eventually, the plant produces flowers. So we need to identify each plant system response that must occur for the bean plant to maintain homeostasis. So we need to know what homeostasis is. That's a steady internal state, and every living thing needs to maintain homeostasis to grow. Humans do, bacteria do, plants do as well. So essentially what the question is asking, what does a plant need to survive? What does it need? Does it need decreased phloem? You need to know what phloem is. Phloem carries sugars, glucose throughout the plant's roots and leaves. It wouldn't make sense to decrease that, so we don't choose that. Does a plant need decreased root absorption? Well, we need to know that through the roots, plants get water, and that doesn't make sense that for a plant to live that they would decrease that. Does it? No. Does a plant need increased gas exchange? Yes. It needs to be able to take carbon dioxide in through its leaves, and oxygen needs to be able to leave. And it also needs increased xylem conduction. Xylem is just a part of a plant that brings up water from the roots. And it would make sense for a plant to be able to live that needs to happen. All right, so next question, 13. Identify which cell part is associated with each cell process that occurs in a bean plant. So all of these things happen in a bean plant: cellular respiration, photosynthesis, and protein synthesis. So how it makes its proteins. And these are the parts of the cell: chloroplast, mitochondria, and ribosome. So it's saying, where do these things happen? The easiest to me is photosynthesis happens in the green part of the plant, the chloroplast. Boom. Okay. Now, notice how it didn't take away that option, so you could possibly put that in all three. But in this case, that is not true. Cellular respiration happens in the powerhouse of the cell. This is where ATP is made, the mitochondria. And protein synthesis happens on this part of the cell called the ribosome. That is correct. Next, cellular respiration. So plants need to produce ATP. They need energy as well. So you need to know the equation for cellular respiration. Identify each reactant of cellular respiration in the cells of a growing bean plant. Select the reactant you want to choose. So it gives all the things of the whole equation, but you only need to pick the reactants, or what for cellular respiration to happen in the mitochondria it needs to start with. Well, a reactant of cellular respiration is glucose, and another reactant in which humans also need to, because our cells undergo cellular respiration. That's how we produce ATP. We need oxygen to do that. And the other three, water, carbon dioxide, and ATP, are the products. But they only ask for the reactants. Question 15. What role does a bean plant play in the food web of an ecosystem? So think about food webs, food chains. It all starts with the sun. A bean plant gets its energy from the sun. Okay? So the answer wouldn't be the sun, and it's not even a choice. But a bean plant, let's look at A. Is a bean plant a producer? Does it produce its own food. Yes, it does. It doesn't need to eat anything else. It produces its own food. It's not a decomposer. That's like a mushroom. A primary consumer, they might get you on that one. That's something like anything that eats plants, so a rabbit or deer. A secondary consumer is what eats the primary consumers. So the answer would be producer. Okay, next one. Which statement can be defended because of the results of the investigation? So essentially, which statement is true? Okay, the type of soil affects plant height. The amount of light has no effect on plant height. The amount of water affects heights of the plants. And the plants grow the tallest after receiving 8 milliliters of fertilizer. Okay, so what you need to do, these are the variables you can change. This is investigating bean plant growth. Select the type of soil, amount of light, concentration of fertilizer, then click Run to view the resulting heights of plants. So in any controlled experiment, you can only adjust one variable. So what you need to, if you have a scenario like this, you need to just pick what thing you want to test first. Let's test the type of soil. So when we test the different soil types, we want to keep the light and fertilizer the same. So we're going to run it with soil type A, keeping everything else the same, and note what happens. With soil type A, we get differing plant heights. Now we're going to change to soil type B, and note I keep other things the same, the light and fertilizer. Okay, we also see differing heights with that are different compared to soil A and B. Let's try soil C, keeping everything else the same. Wow, very little growth. Okay, so I would say A is true, but let's just test the other ones just to be sure. Here you actually need to delete those results, but you can do them again if you want. So let's test the light to make sure that B isn't correct. We'll try 5 hours of light, keeping everything else consistent. "10 hours, keeping soil and fertilizer the same. Well, that's interesting. Man, look how big that is. Next one. So it should be obvious to you that light does in fact have an effect on plant height. So you would eliminate B right away. That could not be it. Boom. How do you do that? There. Can't be that one at all. Questions like this in the Science MCA test, you can't rush through. You got to think about it. Try different things. The amount of water affects heights of plants. Well, guess what? You can't even test that. You can only test soil type, light, and fertilizer. So you can eliminate that one too. Next question. The plants grow tallest after receiving 8 milliliters of fertilizer. Can you even test that? No. So not only did we find out that A was true, we found out that the other three didn't work. So we have to choose A. Next question has to do with safety. Proper safety precautions should be followed when conducting scientific experiments. Identify each of the safety procedures used in this plant investigation in the laboratory. Select each safety precaution you want to choose, so you can choose more than one. When handling fertilizer or any chemicals in the lab, should you use protective eyewear? Why, yes. Should you use caution when calculating the mean plant heights? And that's essentially saying, should you be careful when you're using a ruler? No, it doesn't really make sense. Next one. Use gloves while applying fertilizer to the plants. If fertilizer contains chemicals, you should probably wear gloves. That makes sense. Next one. Use caution to avoid mixing different soil types. That doesn't make sense. Why would you have to use caution for that? Yeah, those are right. Boom. Next one. This is the last question. An investigation is designed to test the effect of the amount of light on bean plant growth. Which part of this design would add a source of error to the investigation? So again, what would cause this investigation to be flawed a little bit, cause it to not be trusted? You're affecting how much light impacts bean growth. So this is what you're testing, light, okay? The only thing you're testing. You want to see how light impacts the growth of the bean plants. Which one would cause your results to not be trusted? Meaning you couldn't say that light was the factor that caused them to grow taller or not as tall. Let's start with D. Supplying all plants with the same amount of fertilizer. Well, that wouldn't create error. That would mean that would keep it controlled, so that couldn't be the answer. Providing all plants with different amounts of light. Well, isn't that what they're testing? So that doesn't really make sense. Giving all plants the same amount of water. Would that create error? Would that make your results not controlled? No, that would make them controlled, so we wouldn't choose that. So the only option that would add error to your results is if you gave them all different types of soil. It's like saying if you were testing these two things all at the same time, okay? You wouldn't know for sure that 15 hours of light made the plants grow taller if you changed the soil for all of your pots. It could be the soil that was causing them to grow taller. You wouldn't be able to confidently say that, so that would be the answer. After you're done here, submit and exit test. I'm finished and I want to submit my final answers. And you can see that I got them all right. 18 out of 8 correct, 18 out of 18 correct, and the actual MCA Science test will be longer than that. Remember to take your time, read through each question, cross off things you don't know. Most of it should just make logical sense.